Good evening, cheeseheads. Welcome to an instant match reaction. Here we go again. I'm your host tonight, Gibbo. Along with me to talk about that, top right hand corner, first timer on the show. It's Isaiah. How are you, Isaiah? Do you want to tell us where you're from and a little bit about yourself?
I'm from North Carolina in the U.S. and guy down at the bottom's my dad. I'm currently studying in Southampton at Solent University, doing a sports journalism degree. So that's where I am now.
Yeah, so it's your first time on, isn't it? So I'm sorry that you got to come on after that, like after a defeat, but I'm sure you'll get used to it, mate, if you come on again. So and down at the bottom, back again midweek. It's Jack. How are you, mate? How are you?
I'm great. We have a title race. It's back on, man. It's back on. Because I'll tell you, I saw a lot of people saying, well, if we win, it gives Arsenal the title. So I think a lot of Spurs fans got to be happy right now.
Oh, I don't know, mate. I'm one of these. I wouldn't want to lose even if it handed Arsenal the title. I hate losing, but I mean, let's go to the start. You know, team news come out. 3-4-3. Bentancur's back in. Lloris kept his place in goal. We were talking about Lloris possibly being dropped. I'm sure we'll get onto Lloris a little bit more later. But Isaiah, what did you think to the team news when you see? Was it what you thought it would be? Did you fancy anything different?
Yeah, I did. I was hoping. As much as I'm not a fan of Sessegnon, I was kind of expecting to see him in, and I wasn't going to be too bothered by that just because he has a bit more pace and he makes fewer defensive errors than Perisic does. And I was also hoping that Lloris would be dropped. It just seems to be, he's had periods where he's kind of up and down, but it seems like it's getting to the point where consistently there's at least one or two errors a game that whether they cost you a goal or not, you're like, how many of these can we let him get away with? Other than that, I was fairly pleased. To see Bentancur back is always great. And I wasn't shocked that he started Emerson, even though I was a little uneasy about it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Lloris would play. I wouldn't have minded seeing him dropped. It's just too many errors now. Jack, what about you? That starting lineup, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, that was actually in our Patreon prediction league chat group. This is the lineup I predicted. I got all 11 spots. Nothing surprised me. It's not what I wanted. I actually even told in our little group, I said, please someone lie to me and tell me he's going to come out with a 3-5-2. But it was absolutely what I predicted, and so I'm glad for the points, but I wasn't thrilled. I was happy, obviously, to see Bentancur. I mean, him coming back to the lineup changed. I mean, we'll get into it, but him in our team changes the team completely.
Yeah, I thought Bentancur come in. We'll talk about the first half now. I get too involved in the game to know what minutes, bits and pieces happened. So just, we'll pick through the first half. And I think you're right. I think Bentancur makes a big difference. I think he's good at pressing, isn't he? He sort of drives on a little bit more than anyone we got in there. And he's good and he's comfortable on the ball and he's fairly progressive. But, City were quite passive, weren't they, Jack, in the first half? And, we had some little breaks, but we didn't really create nothing. But, it was a bit early up before we got the 2 goals. Wasn't a lot really going on. But we had a couple of nice breaks, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought the nice thing is that they were passive early on, but I think they started feeling themselves. They were getting a little bit of opportunities. You can go to the missed header from Holland. They were starting to pile up on the corners in the first half. They were starting to make some pressure, but we were sound defensively. I mean, we really weren't making a lot of errors. And the only thing that I kept getting frustrated with throughout the first half is Holland was on his own. I mean, that if you remember, there was a corner where he was sitting on the 12 on the penalty spot unmarked, and then he bends around the back corner and misses a side footer. He just kind of barely pushes it towards goal, but there was no one on him, no one following him, and that was true all game. It seemed like that we just weren't even putting a body on, which is really weird. But despite that, I think that they actually were pretty sound defensively and were taking their chances. We were getting, a few towards this last 20 minutes, 15 minutes. I think we were starting to get the breaks down the line with Decky and finding Kane down the middle a little bit to hold it up and play it off. So I was pretty pleased even before we scored. I said, it's not bad. We're in this game. So I was pretty pleased with it.
Yeah. Isaiah, you what do you think? First half, like I said, we'll come to the 2 goals, but how do you feel we started the game? How do you think we sort of felt our way into it? I mean, I felt that City, like your dad says, we did sort of do all right defensively, but they never really got in behind us, did they? They played a lot in front of us. It's when they start playing, like when we'll come on to the second half and they start playing behind us, things start to change then when like Oil Rig can't get round, they play it in behind him and he's dead. But what did you think to that first sort of like 43 minutes?
Well, I mean, I agree that we were fairly solid defensively, and also that City were not anywhere near, their best, which they rarely are against us, to be fair. But I felt like one of the things that was working for us was, at least going forward, was sort of there would be a run from Bentancur beyond Kane, and then that would create some separation with the whatever midfielder or defender was on Kane, and then you'd either play him the ball or it would free up space for Kulusevski. And I thought that was a good that's a good thing that Bentancur allows us to do tactically, because he's so athletic and covers so much ground. And in the second half, we're talking first half now, but I feel like, that was sort of one of our biggest things in the first half was that sort of tactical motion from back to front using Bentancur. And I mean, I think that was pretty important.
Yeah, so like I think you're right. I think we sort of coped with it pretty well. It was sort of like defense against attack, but we weren't. It wasn't a lot of it. Wasn't really last ditch stuff, was it? And then and we sort of Kane had that one he went through, didn't he? But it was offside, and we sort of worked our way up the pitch. And a few times, saw quick passes that we did, which actually sort of broke the lines, and we went forward, which. A lot of the time, we are slow, aren't we, Jack? Slow on the ball. But we started, at least today, we had more of those periods where it was 2, 3, 4 passes and we were up the pitch, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that was the thing that when bring Bentancur in, you can actually play him the ball out of the back under pressure, and he will quickly turn, find the space, and keep the ball moving. He doesn't sit on it. He doesn't let the defender crowd his back. He actually keeps it moving and gets it upfield. And so when he's in there, we're moving. And there was plenty of one-touch passing. There was one element. Isaiah and I we always chat. We always on a phone call where we're watching the games. And there was some time where we were deep in our corner, and we just passed it right out. I was like, we don't do that. It seems like any other team other than City, but very deep in the corner, a lot of one-touch passing, all of a sudden we're away. And so there were many times where I felt they were calm and composed, and they looked good. And I didn't feel, and to your point, we weren't getting overrun in the midfield in this. And I think that helped that he didn't have Silva or De Bruyne in there maybe, but still, I thought they handled themselves well from that perspective. They very calm and composed.
Yeah. Like I think you say in the midfield, we weren't getting overrun. I think like when we'll come on to it in the second half until they switched tact a bit and Alvarez sort of dropped in that little hole like Odegaard did against us. But the only worrying thing for me, Isaiah, was we just seemed that we were giving away a lot of free kicks, weren't we? Picking up a lot of yellow cards, like just that little bit slow to it. And you thought, it never, thank God, but you thought one of these going to come back and bite us on the ass, because, we were sort of like, dragging them down and late to the press, weren't we? Giving away fouls for quite a bit in that middle, just before we scored. After the start, there was that period where we were sort of like we were just sort of under the cosh, weren't we?
Yeah, and as much as I had some criticisms for the referee with some of those decisions, like Romero's yellow card, there were under Conte, we seem to be kind of consistently half pressing. It seems like there's an effort to press, but it's not necessarily all that well coordinated. In the first half, there was a little exchange between Hojbjerg and Kane where they were, pointing fingers at each other, trying to get them each, who was going to go and press the goalkeeper and who was going to go and press the center back who was pushing out for the support pass. And it always seems like that with us, that the press is kind of half there, and it results in all these late challenges and free kicks and yellow cards for Romero and Hojbjerg and all of them. So,
yeah. No, I think you bang on, mate. I think you're right. We try to do this press. That's what we try and do, but we don't do it as a team, do we? We've got a couple of individuals who can do it, and a couple of individuals who can't. Like Kane cannot press like he used to. I'm not blaming Kane for any of that, but he's sort of late to a press, isn't he? And then somebody comes in. But talking of pressing, 44 minutes gone, Jack. Ederson plays it to Rodri. As we said about Bentancur being athletic and a good presser, he's on Rodri. Ball breaks. Kulusevski gets on it, gets the run of play, 1-0, and we're thinking, get in there. That is, here we go, 44 minutes. We're going to go in 1-up. Not too bad.
Yeah, yes, but here's the thing: if we flip that, and that's Hugo, we have not stopped talking about that, because that is one of the most atrocious plays. I mean, here you've got Rodri trekking to you, and Bentancur is coming from his right, the goalkeeper's left. Yeah. He plays it into the press as opposed to the other way, and it's not, as I said at the time we're talking, it's not even an accurate pass. He's missed him by 3 feet, so he's stretching for it, just trying to tip it around Bentancur. And then, this would frustrate me if then my goalkeeper is now pointing at me because that's what he started doing.
That's what they do, though, Jack. That's what they do.
But here's the thing: that was at the exact time where it was just brain dead, because we had 7 players in their half. That's when you go long over the top. So what he's doing playing like that ball, I have no idea. And that's just a gift of a mistake. I mean, I'd say, we were talking about this in backstage. Almost every goal was a result of the other team's just boneheaded plays.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah, that was obviously, like we spoke earlier, Bentancur did well there, but horrible from Ederson. But as they said on there, that's what they do a lot of the time. 9 times out of 10, Ederson's like passing it to people like that, then they ping it off. He's had a stinker, probably a little bit cash. I mean, like good press from Bentancur, good finish from Kulusevski against the run of play. And then you're thinking, just see it out till half time. And not only do we go in 1-0 up, we go in 2-0 up. What was your take on the second goal?
Well, at the time, I'm pretty sure everyone in my flat heard me exclaim that it was Emerson Royale who'd scored against City. Of all the games against all the teams, for Emerson Royale to pop with a goal against City was amusing, to say the least. I think it was obviously great work from Kane. Goes in there, wins the challenge and everything, but Rodri, it's another mistake. Like we were saying, almost every goal was the result of a mistake, and it's just you can't just dilly-dally on the ball in your penalty area like that and end up losing it and not being strong in the challenge. And Kane, Dad said this at the time, sees an open Sonny that he could try to cross the ball to and says, no, I'm going to shoot. So kind of indicative of his son's form at the moment. It's certainly not the prettiest goal. It's kind of neither of them were. They were kind of just like goals we grinded out, pressing them high up the pitch, and you just get the right bounce off the goalkeeper, and somehow Emerson pops up with a goal. Yeah,
I mean, so we go in at halftime 2-0 up, probably against the run of play. Really, we were never really the dominant team overall, and I thought City weren't at it. But you go in 2-0 and you think that's where City haven't been great. It's gonna be tough to come back to win that, even though they're capable. And I just want to give a mention. I didn't think Royale was awful today. I didn't. I thought he did. I thought he did okay. I mean, it's difficult, but he wasn't. He had a couple of dodgy moments in the second.
He was steady. One of his best games. One of his best games for Spurs.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm trying to be a little bit positive, because so Jack, we go in. Yeah, I'm going in 2-0 up, Jack. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? What do we need to do? What would you like to see any changes in formation or tactics?
Yeah. Well, of course, I'm thinking, all right, I've called the starting lineup correctly. Our goal scorers I have is Haaland and Decky, so I've already got a goal scorer. I've called the game 2-1 Spurs, so I'm thinking I'm rolling the prediction league for the Patreon. Just by the way, don't forget to hit our like button down there. And it's like I'm like, this is setting up perfectly for me to come on this show and crow that I called it and all that sort of stuff. But I to your point, let's be serious. You have to think about this, and it's easy to coach in arrears, right? You know the outcome. So the question becomes, you're up 2-0, you're on the road. Do you make a change, not because people are playing poorly, but you say, hey, if I can just tighten this up, because I know what a manager like Jose would do, right? Not to say that he's the example we want to use, but we just need to lock this down. So let's bring in an extra midfielder. Maybe we even make this, like the Sessegnon substitution. Let's get a better defender in there. Maybe so let's think about what we need to do just to keep City from getting behind us, because we don't need to score. We just need to prevent them from getting a goal. But of course, they score what, I don't know. I don't have the minutes up there.
I'll tell you, mate, what it is.
47.
So they bagged their first one on 51 minutes. So
51. So it's a little bit longer, but so and so it's like, okay, you can easily argue that you should have gone to a different formation or different personnel, not because of anyone's doing poorly. I mean, Son still can't seem to find a football anywhere close to a dangerous spot on the pitch.
Nah,
but
he's been proper shit, hasn't he?
But you could have said, okay, well, that's the time. Let's go ahead and bring Richarlison in for someone who's going to have some energy to harry the defender. So we've got some pressing upfield to just stop them from getting upfield a little bit. There's a lot of things that I think you could have done to slow them down. Or you're thinking, hey, we're a second half team. We finally got a good first half. The second half is all downhill for us, and let's not change anything because we're doing fine. There's definitely you can quite call the manager out on that.
No, I mean, Zaya, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking a little bit more of the same. But the Spurs, I mean, they upped it, didn't they? Second half, they upped it, and Spurs just not often enough keep the ball well enough. Give it away. You get into good positions, or sloppy passing, or poor passing, or just bad touches, and City are on the front foot, and then they're relentless, then, aren't they? So obviously, the first goal. What's your take on that? Do you lay any blame to anyone on that? Because obviously we'll come to him in a bit, but the sort of like Lloris sort of diving towards the ball and it never really getting there, and then he's leaving his goal open. Are we being harsh on him for that one, or is it not very good? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I said at the time that, after I watched a couple of slow motion replays, that Lloris didn't need to try to come and punch that ball away. But, if he could have seen those replays before he had to do it, then he probably would have come to the same conclusion. But he's got that half a second maybe to decide, and he's a goalkeeper who sees the ball dropping in his 6-yard box, like right in front of him. Most goalkeepers, probably any goalkeeper, is going to try to come and clear that ball, and it just happens that Emerson's doing the same thing. They kind of get in each other's way, and it sets up nicely. So I wouldn't blame Lloris. I think more than anything, it was maybe some weak clearing attempts and a slight breakdown defensively in communication. But I wouldn't say, as harsh as I am on Lloris, I wouldn't say that one's his fault.
And he is harsh. Trust me, he is. And he's been harsh. He's not new to that bandwagon.
I think you. I don't know what you think, mate. Obviously, this is your first time on. I think you've got to be harsh. There's no room for sentiment. If you're aiming to go to the top, the higher you get, there is no room for sentiment, is there? We'll come on to it in a bit, like with Son.
Yeah,
mate. If you're not doing it, you shouldn't be picked. And
I agree.
it's like and so we're talking about. So obviously, Jack, what's your take on that first goal? Are you just saying it's a clusterfuck at the back, or is there any one player?
I know I'm biased, and the team that I see played the most of any team, of course, is Spurs. But it just seems game after game after game, if a bounce has got to go a certain way, it's always seemed to got to fall to our opponent sitting unmarked 8 yards from goal or some other thing. So I do. Obviously, it was a mistake. But even if he punches it, the question is, how far does he actually get it out of the box? Is he sending it 20 yards? Probably not. It's probably just going out to the penalty spot. So you're still kind of in trouble when you're on the ground. So yeah, it was poor decision making, but it wasn't the worst decision he made all night.
No. Do you think it's just like what you've described? Is it just because when balls drop in our area like that, there's just a feeling of sheer panic in that box, isn't there? And people are swinging legs. There's no calm head. The keeper's not very commanding of his area or in that part. And I don't think Dier's really commanding. I think Romero's fantastic, but I don't think he is either. It's just a little bit sort of like whoever's nearest, just swing your leg, and it just creates chaos, doesn't it? And you just look at that goal go and you go, typical. That's a typical Spurs goal to give away.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's the type of thing that happens to teams that are, like you're saying, who are clearly not on form and are spiraling.
Yeah, that's it. Like that's the word I use, spiraling. Then 2 minutes later, mate, it's was it Mahrez who scored in the Haaland goal then, wasn't it? Literally, we can't keep hold of the ball. Couple of good bits of play. They knock it over. Couple of headers. Haaland's just sort of free, isn't he, to nod that in? And you just under the cosh. Then you start to fear the worst, don't you, Jack?
Yeah, it's definitely that's the goal that I would say of the 6 that are scored, I find the least fault in anyone. Yeah. That's one of those that's just good. That's a good set
movement.
Of attackers, good movement, moving the ball quickly, finding the man, and the guy's 7 feet 5 inches, and he's sitting 2 yards from goal, and it just pops off his head. That one, again, the build-up is the problem. Losing the possession is the problem, but the actual goal itself, I'm not faulting any of the defenders, other than the fact that Haaland seemed to be roaming free throughout the entire game, and I just, and that's, I come from a standpoint of again, I don't play high level of football, but but even today when I go out there, the coach and manager of my teams are just like, we are we mark man to man.
Yeah.
Period. There's none of this zonal. There's none of this. I got this spot. You got this spot. We said that's your man, and if he scores, it's your fault. So I mean, that's my mindset. I know it's not how the game is played today, but that goal I think is a legitimate, decent goal. So City's gonna get those against Arsenal. They're gonna get them.
That's what they do.
Against Man United, they're gonna get those goals.
Yeah. I think the worrying thing for me as Isaiah is there probably are. But there's not many teams worse than Spurs that when they come up against adversity, like that first goal goes in, the second one's coming, don't you? They just sort of they fall to pieces, May as well call the team Jigsaw because it's just go to pieces, mate. As soon as that and then it's coming, don't you? But so like your dad said, that was like a City goal. That's quick movement. Hard to apportion any blame. And then we go up the other end, golden opportunity to go back in front. Perisic has got a score there, hasn't he? Great bit of defending. That kid's just got his body in the way, but you've got to be clinical and finish that, haven't you?
Yeah, and I mean, you watch him for Croatia in the World Cup. This year, last year technically, or in 2018, and his few goals for Inter, it just seems like since he's been at Spurs, he's been great crossing the ball, great with the assists. Yeah. His actual finishing has been lacking because in that situation, an elite finisher doesn't try to just let it, kind of hit off their foot towards the near post. They're going to recognize that the defender and the goalkeeper are both going to fly towards the near post, trying to cut off the easiest opportunity. And all you have to do is pass it back across goal into the far post. You don't have to hit the side net. It just, you can basically roll it over the line right up the middle. Yeah, it doesn't have to go, it doesn't have to be a screamer. Just go the other way that the defender and the goalkeeper are moving. And that's how you finish. It's not just about how you strike the ball, which he did poorly. It's also about, reading the situation and finishing as a result of, where the defender and goalkeeper are going to go.
Yeah. And that really, you watch a game and you think that's the moment, because then sort of after that, and probably more so than the missed chance. The real. Go on, Jack. You about to say something?
Because I know my job has been assigned to these things is to be the silver lining. I do want to, again, the comments we're getting are very negative towards Conte and Enic, and that's fine, and that's perfectly understandable, and I get that. This show, again, I don't go pro or anti Enic, and I don't ever call for a manager to get sacked. Rarely do I call for a manager to get sacked because, okay, who's the next guy up? Who's the next owner? You got to have a plan for that. But that goal, while it was a missed chance, that pattern of play is exactly what the formation and Conte ball is set up to do. The ball comes out, we build out of the back, it comes to Kane, it's one touch out to Decky down the line, who's as good a player as we have, cuts it back and finds the trailing wing back coming in unmarked with a clear opportunity. That should result in a goal. And again, I think Isaiah clearly did a good job indicating of why it wasn't. But that is example of the training, what they do on the training pitch is working.
The automations. That's right. That's
and
what
we got those looks many times tonight, over and over and over again. That ball was on, and it worked. We didn't score as many as we wanted, but that ball was on. I mean, the chance that Son had off the header was a overlap. Well, it was Davies, so he's not a wing back, but it's again the defenders coming out of the back unmarked, sending the ball to the far post. Many times we had that. We had Perisic cross the ball that Ake just barely got a head on and went out of bounds. Yeah. Otherwise, Kane is volleying it straight on goal from 4 yards out. The pattern of play tonight, actually, as negative as I see the comments, was actually working. Yeah. Individual errors cost us a game. Eric Dier kicking the ball out of bounds, running a short corner to Emerson at the top of the box for him to shoot from 25 yards. I don't understand how those things happen, but overall, there were patterns of play. I mean, I know really, I think
tonight, Jack, I think you're right. I think for tonight, that happened must have been maybe 4 or 5 times we did those sort of like patterns of play we saw last season, which is more than we have seen in previous weeks, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But then obviously we missed that chance, as you say, from one of our patterns of play. Now, it took a slight deflection, but Mahrez's first goal, the saying on the telly, Neville saying, Jack, has he got to save that? I don't, because I'm going to rip into him. I thought.
No, you will have unanimous opinion. I'll kick it to my son, but he has not been able to defend his near post for 4 years or so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, probably longer. I have never felt like, as great as Lloris has always been, in some of the games he's won basically on his own by, keeping the ball out of the net with unbelievable saves. Some of the simple things have always seemed to plague him. When to come out and close down the angle on the striker, defending his near post, the simple acts of distribution beyond just 2-3 yard passes. He just has never gotten better at those things. And now that he's 36 and getting older, he's actively getting worse. And it's...
Yep. In fact, you make a good point. I'm watching the extended highlights of the game right now because I want to refresh my memory some stuff. You remember the header in the first half from Holland that goes over the bar?
Yeah, he's out. He comes
way out. He's coming out 8 yards. He has no chance of getting to that ball. If it's Son heading the ball, yes, but he's going against a guy who's 7 feet 5 inches. Yeah. You're never getting there. So that's another example. We got lucky, but it could have cost us.
I think the thing is with, even if, it's not a massive mistake, it's just poor goalkeeping, but he seems to be costing us so much more now than he saves us. Because at one point, I think he used to make mistakes, but he probably saved us as much, if not more. But now I think he's costing us, and you've got to nip that in the bud. Like I said, at the top level, there is no room for sentiment. If it's done, if his time's done, if he's not performing, then you get him out. Because the last time it happened, can you remember he was really poor for weeks, and then unfortunately he made a mistake and done his elbow against Brighton, and he was out, wasn't he? But he had that period. Then he's just got these mistakes in him, but he's just costing us all the time now. And there has got to be a real chance of against Fulham of Forster starting goal. And I don't think Forster's a great keeper,
No.
but I just think he's probably a little bit more. I don't want to say, I don't know if reliable is the right word, but he's not brilliant at anything. But I doubt he'll make the silly mistakes. Do you get what I mean? I just think.
Yeah, I do. And here's my thought on that. You mentioned earlier, Gibbo, is that it's not that the backup is clearly better, but sometimes you have to say you're not getting it done. And there are consequences for a club that wants to win things. And that's, you can argue whether or not we're a club that wants to win things, and I get that.
Yeah.
But if you think you want to win things, then sometimes you got to bench people just because they're not playing well, and you need to know that they don't have a guaranteed spot, and that would apply to Son.
Yeah,
that's got to apply to Eric Dier.
Yeah, I was going to.
I'm not saying Sanchez is better, but for sake,
mate,
that ball that he swung out of bounds late in the game. I mean, he didn't. There was no one. I don't know who he's even playing it to. What the hell?
So I'm going to come on to that. I mean, I'm not saying get Son out the club. No. I'm just about what I'm saying is, Jack. I'm not saying like get Son out the club. Son's been dreadful, and the last time we had a really good performance out of him was when he got brought on against Leicester because he'd been dropped. And I've said on this show many times, he used to have these periods under Poch, but Poch would drop him. He would drop him, and then he'd bring him on and he'd score, but he'd drop him still the next week. Well, he wouldn't. He'd still be on the bench next week, and he'd come on and play well and maybe score. And then he'd just bring him back in the team, and then he'd go on one of these runs. But the guy is playing. He is so devoid of confidence. He's playing so poorly but he's not being dropped. And another thing is, like, you've got Lloris now, you've got Dier. These are guys who are constantly made mistakes under various managers. Son's playing poorly, and you just feel. I'll come to you, Ozzo, on this. You just feel with some of these that, you know, like your Dier and Lloris. Is it and Davies? I don't think he was that bad today, but they're used to what's happening at Spurs now. In my opinion, I've seen over the last few years. These guys have got to be moved on. Kane is an anomaly because he is the GOAT. He'll probably be going anyway. But this sort of like these mental farts from some of these players now. We just need to be moving them on. But they've been there too long. It doesn't hurt them as much. The mistakes, it's just their shrug of the shoulders. Here we go again. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, these are players who are used to the situation of having a really shit run of form, making a lot of individual mistakes, and being in the team again the next week. They're used to that sort of problem that we've had at Spurs for as long as I've been supporting. And at some point, you have players who have been through all of these bad periods, all of these, well, at least a couple of nearly moments, and they're part of a bad, other than Kane, who, like you said, is the anomaly. They're part of this bad mentality. So it's not that you have to get rid of Sanchez and Dier because they're not good enough to be the third or fourth center back, back on the bench. But it's because you want to get players who are not used to that, players who are ready to fight for their spot, players who are just not part of that old mentality issue that we've had for over a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a simple thing that managers have been saying, going all the way back to the end of to after the Champions League final in 2019. We needed a rebuild then, and we need a rebuild now, which doesn't mean just buying a bunch of new players. There's a lot of guys who have to go, whether or not, it's because they're complete shit or because they just need to move on.
You just need that churn, don't you, Isaiah? You just got to have that churn. All other clubs do it. You've got to move them on. And it's probably a discussion for another day, but you've got to sell. Like, there'll be a point. Like, if someone were to come in with a certain amount of money for, I'm not saying sell Son. He's been brilliant for years, but he's having a bad season. He's having a really bad season. But if somebody came in with 70, 80 million for Son and the age he is, you've got to start thinking, well, if you trust the people who've got the money to replace him, that's a different story as well. But you've got to be thinking, have we had the best years out of him? Is it time to move him on and bring someone else in? But those players, like you're saying, Lloris, Dier, these players now, because it's just a familiar pattern. Jack, do you agree with me? Like, You know, these
Yeah,
we
I
have
mean,
these patterns where like a Dier will come in and he'll play well for him. We go, oh, fair play, Dier's playing well. Then all of a sudden, just not up to the level that we require or we'd like.
yeah, I mean, I think that unfortunately, you know, high level sports is not you mentioned it at some point, it's not a game, it's not something for sentimentality. And, you know, I'll use an American sports example. The New England Patriots were fortunate to have the greatest NFL quarterback in the history of the game. But in addition to that, one of the things that they did exceptionally well is they sold high over and over and over again. Players would have career years and then they would get rid of them. And we don't have buying and selling, but it's trades or they release them from their contract or whatever. And I can't tell you how many times, you know, over the last 20 years to be like, how are they getting rid of, you know, Joe Blow? And Joe Blow would go to another team on a big contract and you'd never hear from him ever again. Because they get somebody in the draft or they get some young person that's been scouted and they never missed a beat. They just constantly refresh. But it helped to have the greatest quarterback in the world. And you could make that argument to his buddy, Kane. You have a generational talent and you just need to keep recycling players. If they're not good enough, you just keep moving them on. And you know, I was mentioning, I had a conversation with someone who, or maybe it was in this chat group. They were saying, gosh, I always think Dier is still an up and coming young player, but he's 29. And I said, are you serious? I feel like he's 35 at the end of his career. The fact that he's only 29 still blows me away. So there are a lot of players who need to go because it doesn't matter. We've changed the manager, we've changed the system. You can complain about Enic, what they bought and what they haven't bought. We don't tend to spend money very well.
No,
at least not lately. When we spend big money, I mean, you know, but at the very least, you know, there's a funk in this club that's been there because we get, as I said, we're nearly there. But those same players who have basically failed for 7 years, a lot of them are still at the club.
Yeah,
like I don't know how many other teams and other clubs would do that. I mean,
no, they.
Well, our friends in North London have completely refreshed that squad.
We're well known for it, aren't we? I mean, it's just slightly going off task what we're talking about, but like, you know, I have been critical of Conte, but regardless of who the manager is at the minute, I think when you look at it now and how things are going and the patterns we keep having, I think you got to look at it. And nobody wants that to hear that, oh, it's going to be another rebuilding job. But I think when you look at it, not that's what we want, but I think that's what we're going to have. Lloris, Dier, Davies, wing backs, like even Perisic, even is 34. Doherty's in his 30s. The backups to him aren't very good. Kane looks like he could be off. Son is getting towards it. You know, I think looking at it, whatever happens, whether it be Conte who does it or Conte moves on, it's going to have to be rebuilt, isn't it? And it's not even halfway done. Not even halfway. If they're saying Conte started that, it's not even halfway done.
Let's go through the list. I mean, of like if you were literally coming in this and you're playing Football Manager, I don't play video games, whatever that thing is, and you say, okay, who among the squad am I going to keep for the next 3 years? And I mean, you're talking about Decky, you're talking about Bentancur, you're talking about Basuma. I'm just throwing names out there. Romero. I think Skipp, you know, hasn't had a lot of football in him, but I think he's young enough and shows enough leadership and promise that you keep him. Who else would you keep?
You Richarlison because you've paid a lot of money for him.
Thank you.
Udogie is going to be coming in. Udogie, that kid.
Yeah.
Udogie, Spence.
Yeah. You'd say Hojbjerg. I know a lot of people don't like him, but at the minute, he's one of the mainstays of the team.
Yeah, he's on a terrible run, but
he's not playing well.
As I said, he's only played 1,000 minutes the last 2 years.
Yeah.
He's also someone who should be dropped and rotated.
Yeah. But if you're looking at that,
wait, Sarr.
Yeah.
Sarr. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I got about 10 to 12 players that are fairly all under 25, 26. Who are not bad talents. I think, you know, and the problem is you can't do it with Conte. If you're going to do that, you got to get rid of Conte. And that's what we spent, an hour on the post show after the North London Derby, which is, you know, you either go and give this guy everything he wants because you're trying to win now with this group, or you say, you know what, you're done see it through the end of the season, and we're going to do a complete rebuild. If that means we wind up 10th for a couple of years, fine, so be it. But we're gonna.
He ain't rebuilding, mate. He won't buy.
No, he's not a rebuilding manager.
He doesn't want that. No, but you're saying those players, but in there as well, there's players who are all right. I mean, like rebuilding. Are we looking at Kane going and Richarlison possibly being his replacement? Because Richarlison is a good player.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, no, I'm not fine with Kane leaving.
And when I say he's a good player, in my opinion, I'm saying he's good.
If you give him somebody who can give him service, if we bring an attacking midfielder, you bring someone, and not just
he will need that,
but someone who can cross the ball, people who can cross balls, people who can find him on the run. A la the Ericsson type of creative midfielder, and he's
so we're going to have to change.
Capable. Like Brazil knows how to use him.
Yeah, if he's our number 9, you are going to have to change how you play.
Yes.
So the whole thing is when we could get into this for a whole show now, couldn't we? Because it's
go back to the 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, rebuild is like saying Craig's in the chat. He's saying we're already rebuilding. I don't see that. I think it's just a fucking mishmash, of 4 different players.
Well, I mean, we're kind of split between a rebuild and holding
Spence
on.
Spence don't even get a. I don't think he's had more than 10 minutes in a game, has he?
No, but if you were hiring a new manager, if you're going to give Ryan Mason the job for the rest of the season, and I'm not advocating that at all, by the way, please don't get me wrong. I don't want that to happen. But I mean, this is where you'd say, okay, your job is to play these people and start giving them experience. And if we finish 9th, we finish 9th. But we need these players to understand how to play in the Premier League. I'm not advocating that at all.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll come to you on. The club can't afford to finish 9th, though, can they? Now, how we're set up in geared, club is geared to be finishing Champions League football. I'm not saying I don't think we'll get it this year, but that's what Levy's looking at. That's where the dollar is. That's where this club's been put now. So it's not gonna. We might have to rebuild, but we won't. I don't think we're going to have. I don't think they're going to want it rebuilt in 5-6 years. What do you think?
I to an extent I agree with Craig in the comments, because to be fair, we have had a number of outgoings. I don't have the exact number, but a number of outgoings and quite a few players in. Some of them young, like Sarr and Spence. Some of them older Conte players like Perisic, and also on the young side, Kulusevski and Bentancur and Romero are all actually fairly young players. But when Arteta got to Arsenal, his squad was not anything like what he wanted, and they've had something like 22 or 24 outgoings since he's been there, a ton of new players in, and they've had a steady run of spending. And while people always say Conte is not a rebuild manager, that's not what you have Conte for. His first stint at Juventus was him coming into a team that had been for a long time not winning anything. And they managed to spend a lot of money, get a lot of those players in that first season, and he came into success pretty quickly. But he actually, I don't know that he's unwilling to rebuild, and more that that's just never the job he's been hired for since those early Juventus days. But he has talked about a project here, and that project's last 3-4 years. We're not ready for this yet. He talked about it after Arsenal, they're in the spot that Spurs would want to be in a few years. The problem with all of that is, if he's going to talk about a rebuild, he needs new signings, his project, he's going to have to either sign a new contract, or he's going to have to say, if I get a few signings, if we get Champions League football, make a statement about what's going to mean him signing a new deal, so that the players know, the fans know, the owners know, where he actually stands in his project with Spurs. Or is he just going to make a decision on a whim on, that his wife wants him to move back to Italy at the end of the season, and all of a sudden we've just bought Porro and some other Conte players in January, and all of a sudden he's gone? It leaves you kind of in limbo on what this project actually is. if we don't know how long he's going to be here. It's just it doesn't help.
Obviously, there's big debate with everything that like the supporters trust is saying to the club. What is the direction? What is the project? Do you think the club really know what the project is, or do you think we're just doing it off the cuff at the minute?
Levy is. I mean, again, I'm not anti or pro, but just from a third party and not someone who grew up supporting Spurs, obviously. But he's the only owner that I've ever known, right? So it seems that we constantly are being pulled and tugged from one concept and strategy to another, and we've got a lot of talent that's not with the club, that doesn't necessarily have a path to the first team. But going back, if you're going to do that full rebuild, you got to like this Trust saying, are we going to completely refresh? We're going to get rid of this group of players that meaning Kane has to go on to Newcastle or United or whatever to get Shearer's record and start all over again? Or are we going to try and continue to do the Chelsea thing where we're just going to spend money and buy players and try to rebuild year to year to year so that we're always relevant? Because we still have to get rid of Reggie, we still have to get rid of Tanguy, we still have to get rid of Gio and others, right? They're still at the club technically. They haven't gotten permanent solutions. But then you still got Scarlett out there, you got Devine out there, you got Lancashire out there, you got White, you got Parrott, you got all these other younger players that could be part of the club that you could maybe are good enough to develop. I don't know. I don't pretend to know. But my saying is that there is no clear direction. We seem like we came into this season as, hey, we're going to give him the ready-made players. They bought Basuma, they bought Perisic, couldn't get the left center back they wanted, but they brought in someone with experience who had a nightmare 10, 15 minutes tonight. Good Lord.
Oh, yeah, he had a shocker.
Oh, my God. Dave down under must be losing his mind
in the
chat. I don't even want to look at what he had to say. But, I mean, we Richarlison and brought in some ready-made players, so it seemed like that was the direction. And, again, up until the World Cup break, best start in club history, won the Champions League game group, albeit with a lot of difficulty, not playing great football, but the results were there. And then we come back from the break and it has completely fallen apart in a very small amount of time. There's still a lot of football to be played, but I think the supporters' trust is right. There's never been, and it's something in Conte referenced, it's something about English football where there doesn't seem to be anyone other than the manager being the spokesperson for the club. And
that's never happened.
That's weird, but Conte's not the best spokesperson, clearly. I mean, and it would be nice to hear from someone, but again, Daniel Levy's given one interview in 22 years, so it's not coming from him.
Not coming from him.
And evidently, you got to put a missing persons report out for Paratici, because while he was the spokesman for his Italian clubs, he certainly doesn't say a word much around here. He did that 1 or 2 interviews early on, I think, with Spurs TV or whatever. But that's been it. So you just, I think the fan base is owed some communication, but they're not going to get it.
They're not going to get it off Levy. They're not going to get it off Levy. And over here, like when he was saying about, the medical staff, I mean, as Isaiah, I don't know how long you've been watching Premier League football, but I bet you can count on probably 1 or 2 fingers the amount of times, like a sporting director, or like somebody from the medical staff, or somebody from somewhere else. That just doesn't happen over here. Like Conte can say that, he can say that all he likes, but that doesn't happen over here. It doesn't happen in this country. It might be what he said about people come out in Italy and talk before, but he's in England. He's coached in England before. He's a football man. He knows. That's just waffle to me coming from him. That he knows the score. And your dad's right. Levy ain't coming out, and Paratici's gone. We used to see him on his phone walking around all the time. I don't know where he is at the minute, but I think the whole thing with what I've been, the frustration, and I'm struggling to see a clear plan at Tottenham. Even if we are changing players and bringing players in, I'm struggling to see. For a bit with Conte, I did. But then if you're not going to get him exactly what he wants when he wants, I'm thinking to myself, what are you going to do?
Yeah, and I think Paratici, however I'm supposed to say his name, Fabio, I think he is I think he might be in hiding after the all of the stuff about the Juventus financial allegations, whatever was going on there. Because I know that, well, obviously he had to have been at least in some way culpable, at the bare minimum negligent to not know all of this that was going on at his football club. So I wonder if he's sort of staying out of the media spotlight at the moment. And part of this, like, you know, Conte, while he hadn't signed a new contract previously, was making what I felt like were difficultly worded, you know, poorly worded statements of intent to continue on at Spurs. And then with his director of football sort of in limbo, who knows if he's going to still be around, you know, if Paratici's still going to be around, and if he's not going to be there, you know, who's going to be out getting talent for Conte. And you know, this has obviously been a really tough year personally for Conte.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point. I think it's a really good point.
You know, all of that. So a lot of other things, external things, are causing uncertainty around the director of football and around the manager right now. That's probably, I mean, there's no way it's not kind of seeping into the minds of the players, you know, affecting things on the training pitch and in games. And what we desperately need is a little bit of stability, even if that is just in the statement from the club, which, to be fair, they did say they wanted to make a statement to the supporters and tell us what their vision was after the transfer market.
Yeah.
Or after the transfer window, yeah.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
But
Craig has got, you should put his most recent comment up. I think that's a good point as well.
Yeah. Which one? I'm just going through. I'm not very good at the technical stuff, but
okay, yeah, there.
Yeah, this one. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was it 4 months ago?
Seems like forever ago.
He probably knows more, but he's known about me. It seems like it's ages
I've aged
ago.
a lot in 4 months watching this club play. So, but yes, I mean, and again, I don't have any reason to doubt Paratici. At least we have a director of football, because for many years we didn't. So I'd rather have him there than not.
Here's another point, though. We've had directors of football. We had a director of football. Redknapp came in because we had to get rid of Ramos. I don't want a director of football. Oh, you go, director of football. This is what we're going to do. Then we get rid of Redknapp. Director of football comes in. So we're all struggling here to see, well, personally as well, me, what the long game is. So Paratici could be doing what he's doing. But can you, if Levy decides that Conte's not long term, and whenever he goes, and this is who I want, whether it be Tuchel, Poch, whoever, and they come in and say, I don't want a director of football. This Paratici could be off. This is the thing, isn't it? Like you're saying, Isaiah, about the stability of the club. I've got absolutely no faith that Conte, Paratici, Kane, all three of them could be gone next year. A couple of them could be gone. One of them could be gone. You just don't know, do we? But I mean, we've sort of digressed a little bit. Obviously, at the point we were talking, we were 3-2 down, 4-2 down, and as you said, Jack, horrendous defending from Lenglet just compounded the second half, didn't they?
Yeah. So going back to I'm trying to think. The third goal was the near post, right?
The third goal was the near post, which we talked about. The fourth one, high ball. I think it looked like me playing centre back.
He did some earlier, about 5 minutes earlier, did some weird chesting thing and it wasn't chested to one of our players. It was chested to City. So that was really weird. And then this, I don't know why he thinks he's all alone. And he can just casually, put his thigh on it and jog back to the goalkeeper when clearly that he didn't have that kind of time. So that, he just had a bad cameo. I mean, I'm not down on him as a player, but I will say that at that point, I didn't see any evidence of us scoring at that point, but that obviously killed the game.
I mean, Isaiah, when we made the subs, I'm not being really down on the subs, but we couldn't really, I know we brought Richarlison on, but we couldn't really do anything in the middle. Like Basuma is I like Basuma. I think he's been poor. I think he struggled. But we can't really bring on the changes that would possibly push us to maybe get that goal. Did you feel like that? I thought we're bringing players on now, but to sort of have a go maybe with Richarlison, putting a lot of energy. But you know what I mean? You can't get on the front foot or try to do something else. I just felt like subs for subs. Let's try and get back into it, but with no massive plan. And I'm not having to go at Conte for that. Like I said, I've been critical of him. I just think he's probably looking at his hand and thinking, this is probably what I need to do with it, isn't it?
Yeah, and when Sessegnon came on for Perisic, I understood why the sub happened, because
He got beat easy for that goal, didn't he?
Yeah, and he gets beat easily a lot because he was converted into a wing back late in his career by Conte. But I mean, he's still not someone who grew up learning how to defend in those 1v1 situations.
He's a winger
as a fullback. And so I understand that if you're getting overloaded on that side, then you bring in someone who did, grow up learning those sort of things. He is a better defender. But for me, he brings him on once, we're losing the game. And I'm like, if you made that change maybe at 2-1 or even 2-2 or even at halftime, I might have said, okay, that's a good sub. But once you bring on the more defensive player when you're already losing, it's kind of it's subtracting from your offensive effort, because Sessegnon does almost nothing getting forward. He's a terrible crosser of the ball. He doesn't take defenders on. And then we brought on Richarlison a lot later for Son, and I don't know how fit Richarlison is. I understand he's been out since the World Cup and all of that, but it just felt like by the time Richarlison came on,
78th minute,
everything for us had kind of petered out offensively. We weren't creating any more chances. We're losing the game. City are comfortable, and there's not a lot of space and not a lot of time for him to actually affect the game.
Agreed.
So it just kind of feels like you're bringing on subs because you're losing, so you have to make subs, as opposed to like, okay, this is how we're going to change our tactics, the way that we're playing, to try to change the way the game's going and get back into it.
All good points, mate. Jack, it's like I said to you, I just feel like watching Spurs at the minute, you just feel like things aren't right, don't you? Like Spurs put out a video the other day of them trading. They had these polls. It's like a fitness thing in there doing, and it was.
Oh yeah. I know.
It was ridiculous, and I'm looking at people out there.
That should
thinking,
never have been put out.
You're looking at that thinking,
that was a terrible look.
What is this?
I think it's meaningless. The actual event. That's a terrible look for the club. They should not have. Put that out.
It was, and then like the performance, they was a little bit better, but we just under Conte, we thought we were moving forward, or we sort of got rid of that at the end of last season, and then this season it's just creeping back in, and you think the whole thing, we need new players. Is Conte up for getting these players and being there for the rebuild? And the board thinking, now look, we don't really want him to sign a contract because he's a pain in the ass. It's just typical Spurs, and and that's how that game sort of finished for me. I'm just watching it, going through the motions, which is happening far too often under managers now.
I don't know. I mean, again, I really feel like the second half of the Arsenal game and the full out here opportunity that we saw tonight, I don't feel like they're going through the motions. I see effort. I see trying. I just see a lot of players who are, for whatever reason, aren't good enough or just not in good form. I don't think that it's just all gloom and doom. I mean, I see, Hotspur Sam, says, Sessegnon's an awful defender. He's not an awful defender. He's not good enough. But here's the thing: if you had the Bastoni level, and again, I've never watched the guy play, but I'm just using the name as an example, as your left center back, then you can afford to have a Perisic who defends like a winger, because he tries to nick the ball and go forward, and that's fine when you're a winger, not when you're the last defender to stop your guy from going to goal. So he tries to win the ball, and that's how he got taken. He stabs at it, and that's why Mahrez goes by him. And the same thing when he on the other goal where he tries to come out and win it, he tries to beat player to a regular defender, says, you know what? Yeah, if I win it, it's great. I'm going forward. But if I don't, then they're in the box. So a defender's mindset would say, okay, I'm going to run up and close space down. I'm not going to try to win that ball. And it's fine if you got a Romero or better level defender across your back three in every spot, but we don't. So again, to Hotspur Sam, it's not that Sessegnon is an awful defender. He's just better than Perisic one-on-one. And so it would have been nice to have him in earlier, because Mahrez was having a go down the right side. So
look, the game's finished. We've lost 4-2. I don't think many people expect us to go there and win. I'm not. I've never been the type of guy who goes, "Oh, you know, we've lost 4-2. We need the points." Very difficult evening watching it. Didn't expect anything. Go 2-0 up, and then obviously the second half happens. We go into Fulham Monday night. How do you come away from tonight's game feeling, Isaiah? How have you come away? Your feelings on the next game and where Spurs are going at the minute? How are you feeling?
And are we home or away for Fulham?
Away, and then we've got City again at home after.
Yeah, going into Fulham, you know, they're obviously playing very well. You know, they're well beyond my expectations for them for this season. I think well beyond probably even their own expectations for them this season. And so you kind of look at a team that's very confident. Yeah, obviously, as many complaints as we have about our squad, our players are a lot better than theirs, you know, save for maybe like Emerson and Dier. But like they don't have anyone anywhere near as good as Harry Kane or Kulusevski, Bentancur. So you would look at it like that and say, well, maybe our better players can get us over the line. But confidence plays such an enormous role in the way that these games play out, especially, you know, at high level, because, you know, it just, I think about our center backs going up against a guy like Sam says, Mitrovic. You're like, you know, he is confident, he's aggressive. And our center backs, besides Romero, who's obviously confident and aggressive, but he's going to go in between that pocket of space between either Lenglet and Dier or Davies and Dier. And he's going to try to play in that pocket of space. And those are three defenders, you know, Dier, Lenglet, and Davies, who are not confident, who are not playing overly well at the moment. And you just see him literally exactly what Hotspur Sam says, having a field day, because these Fulham players are so confident because they're having such a great season. And if they lose, they're supposed to lose.
Yeah, they got nothing to lose.
Playing Spurs. So it seems like a perfect storm for another bad result, sending us into, you know, another game with City, which just sounds so fun.
Yeah. Jack, a little bit of positivity then. Game's finished today, 4-2. Don't know what you expected the result to be. What are you thinking going forward for Spurs now?
Right. Well, I think that obviously the next two matches are extremely difficult, and it would be unsurprising to come away with 0 points out of the next two fixtures. If that happens, my feeling is that, you know, and particularly the window closes and we've signed no one, right? So let's play out the worst case scenario. Then for my money, I'd say, okay, let's get the club together and say, okay, Premier League, we're not getting top four. We're probably not even getting Europe. Let's go all in on one of these two competitions. Well, you want to make the Champions League and make a deep run, or let's go all in on a competition we can actually win, which is the FA Cup. It would be a way to have the fans rally around something. I know that's not the way it works. No manager knows club says, hey, we're shit canning all these games. Don't worry about them. Doesn't matter. You know, we're just going all in. Now you see it done. They don't say it. Sometimes you've watched it happen the way somebody did with the Europa League recently.
Well, West Ham got quite far, didn't they?
Yeah, it was West Ham. Thank you. I thank you. It was West Ham. They really went all in and said we could win this and get in the Champions League, and that may have cost them where they are. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, I as I said, next game is Fulham. It's clearly a winnable game. To Isaiah's point, they're not.
Yeah.
There's very few players on that pitch that are better than the players that we're going to side up, and I think that if you play the same way you did tonight against a lesser team, I think it's very winnable, and I'm perfectly would be unsurprised again if they won 2-0. That wouldn't surprise me a bit. The home leg, the City. What I dread most is playing at home because you can hear it through the TV for us, the tension and the fans are just ready to start booing. They're just ready to start going down on the team. They're ready to start the Enic out, the Levy out, the whatever out chance. And I just would rather hey, just play on the road the rest of the way, just because it just stresses me out to hear that, because I've been in that stadium a few times, and when the atmosphere I was at Newcastle, as I mentioned, and it gets very ugly very fast. And so but we'll see. I mean, I've given up on caring. I don't read any news. I don't follow transfer news. I've gone in my little in between games. I go into my cave, as I told you. I just go to blackout.
Yeah.
I don't pay attention. I go to work. I do what I got to do, and I show up back for games and hope spring's eternal and they actually put in a performance and get a result.
And I wish I could be like you, Jack, but I don't. I have the hope. I like to see all the stuff going on, and like my motto is, it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah, but Twitter's toxic. Twitter just sends me into
Twitter is toxic. Twitter is toxic, but I like to see new players. I like to see a signing. I get excited by new players coming in at Spurs, hopefully being good. I want to see us play good football, and I've been here too many times, and I've just got that. I'm sorry, I don't want to be negative, so I'm not going to get into it. I'll do them on other shows. I've just got a feeling that things aren't going as they should do, and I've just got.
I said that on the last show. Something seems to be wrong in the dressing room. I feel it. I didn't feel as much tonight as I did after North London Derby.
But every defeat will just, like I said, Spurs. I said in our group, Spurs are spiraling. You can sort of see it, but we've been there many times before. The club will always be there. We move on. We go again. Fulham away Monday, winnable game. Won away at Palace. I know Fulham are better than Palace, but. So I'm going to get, because you guys won't be off, I'm going to get a score prediction off you for the Fulham game. Isaiah, what are you thinking? Spurs Fulham or Fulham Spurs? Give us a score.
I'll go 2-1 Spurs, just to be positive.
Good man. Jack, score prediction for the Fulham game.
That didn't work for me last time, so I'll go 3-1 Fulham.
Bit of reverse psychology this time. Anyway, guys, some really good stuff in the chat tonight. Good reaction show. Great to have you back on, Jack. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yep.
Yeah, and obviously, Isaiah, thanks for coming on. Great debut, mate. Hopefully you'll come on again. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been very enjoyable. I think I might be back on a Wednesday at some point. So
yeah. I missed you earlier. We'll get you on a Wednesday for a proper show where we can really get stuck into all the shit that happens around Spurs. But thanks for coming on. Thanks for everyone in the comments. Please hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not. Keep looking for us on socials. And come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Yep. Come on, you Spurs.
Good man.